5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
You're listening to the GHT Overland Podcast. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us on the GHT Overland Podcast for Part 2 with Karin and Christian of Wildlife Moments.
That's wildlifemoments.de.
Yes, DE.
Now, in the event you're new to the podcast, thank you for listening. Our aim is to provide you the greatest interviews and insights from overland travelers around the globe.
You will learn from the basics to the advanced in overlanding, so buckle up and get ready for Part 2 with Karin and Christian.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Lisa.
This is the second half and packed with fun stories and, of course, good information from Karin and Christian, two very experienced overlanders from their biggest challenges, spanning from Iran to Oregon. But first, finishing our conversation on border crossings.
We'll then get into the details on financing a global overland trip.
Lots to get into and lots of great overland stories. Foregoing a bunch more chitter-chatter, Lisa, let's jump right back in to the interview where we left off. Listeners could learn from?
From my perspective, crossing from Iran to Turkmenistan, that was an absolutely outstanding one. We were 3 cars on that day, and it took 7 hours.
What all were they going through that it took 7 hours? Was it mainly paperwork? Did they have to go through the entire vehicles? What was it that took so long?
Tourist cars, and they decided, okay, we are a group now. We don't know each other, but don't know about that. And they decided, okay, you are a group with 3 cars, and then it was a step-by-step handling. First the papers from all of us, then we separated, or the women have to go to the meeting. And then they started with the car inspection from this 3 thing, and then there was lunch break. So the time was running.
I would say we alone could have made it maybe in 4 to 5 hours, so it took 7 hours. But in terms of what they did, it was, of course, a lot of paperwork, all very official with stamps and very serious. Again, in terms, we heard a lot about bribery at that border crossing. There was nothing. We got receipts for everything. For example, in our box in the rear of the car, they started pulling everything out there. But then,
not my underwear.
Not your underwear.
The underwear from the women.
Well, that's good.
They don't want to touch it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but they went through all the medication we have. They checked everything, if that is legal or if that is illegal, and all those things. So it took a lot of time. And you have to be patient with them. But that's what I said again. I'm serious, but don't accept everything, because they really turn your car to the left if you accept everything.
Any specific safety planning you do or tips you can provide our listeners on safety and security?
Well, what we learned in Oregon, unfortunately, is have a hidden safe in the car. It's a good thing, because they found us before nearly everything, but they did not find our safe. And I'm not going to tell you a safe place for that. In terms of money management and safety is a learning we have surely, but otherwise I would still rely on my common sense. And of course, I mean, there are so many places where you can find information, and maybe we have not done that enough because we felt so safe getting into the US and into Canada. But on the first half of the trip, we have checked that actually on regular basis. We had an app on the phone where we got alerts when there were any incidents happening in the countries, like terroristic attacks or demonstrations or so. But somehow we stopped using that in North America. Maybe we took it too easy here because we felt so safe, where we say now we are in places that we are familiar with, we know how it works.
Did you find it difficult changing currency as you traveled?
No, sometimes annoying, I would say, but not difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest difficulty in that sense is that Iran is cut off from all international banking systems. You have to carry cash into the country. But we had never problems in changing neither euros nor in Iran or in any other country into the local currency.
Yeah. No, that's not right. With US dollar, we had some problems because in Iran, they accepted only the new.
Oh, yeah, the new $100 notes.
The new $100. That was a funny thing. We had some old $100 and new one, and they only accepted the new one.
That's maybe a good advice for people traveling the old Silk Road over old $100 notes in local currency. Took a while. That would be point.
So surprisingly,
Yeah, you probably want to make sure your currency is of the newest type of print would be good advice. And then I'd also make mention for our listeners that, especially those coming into the U.S. that are from other countries, make sure everything is packed up and locked and secure, whether it be a safe that you've got somewhere or you just keep those belongings with you. Don't come into the U.S. thinking that the great people here are not going to steal your stuff. Unfortunately, there are a small group that will.
Yeah.
I have to agree, unfortunately.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yep.
But,
no, it just is what it is.
I think this group of people is everywhere, not only in the US or North America, but
idiots are everywhere.
It's just as said, maybe we took it not serious enough anymore after we had all those so-called dangerous and strange countries behind us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how are you guys handling auto and health insurance?
That depends on the country. So we had in some of the countries on the old Silk Road, you have to have a local car insurance, which you usually get at the border or close to the border, which is a piece of paper you don't want to rely on when something happens.
In the case of an accident, it's senseless.
Yeah, it's useless. You have to have it. I mean, our European or our German car insurance, and then in Russia, again, we were covered by that. So we had no need for local insurance. And here in North America, we have a U.S. car insurance, which covers the U.S. and Canada for us.
Yeah.
On finances, one of the most common questions asked is, how can you afford to do what you're doing? What thoughts or advice would you give our listeners to pull off a global overlanding trip?
We made a simple calculation and said, how much money will we need for, let's say, 3-year trip around the world?
But I think it was helpful based on the experience with the 7 months in Australia before. Yeah, that was our calculation.
So to be very simple, to be precise on that, as Karin mentioned, we had the experience with Australia. So we calculated with $2,500 per month, where we said that's what we will need as a cost of living if we want to have some fun, like going a bit diving in between or doing some organized tours in between, if you like. And on top of that, we calculated with around $1,000 for car repairs per month. So
or regular service.
That's not happening, of course, every month, but regular service or things are going to break that we can replace those. So that's the very rough calculation we did.
And so for the amount of time that you've been on the road, how accurate has that proven to be?
We cannot yet say it for sure how accurate it is. It seems to work, obviously. But the thing why we cannot be so sure is that we in the beginning had a lot of extremely
very
cheap countries. So in Iran, I think we paid for 1 month for 30 days in Iran less than $400 for the whole month. and similar amounts apply for Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and those countries. And from Russia, then it got a bit more expensive. So now we are in the peak countries of our plan. But overall, I would say this is still. It worked in Australia like that, and we have that impression it also works in Northern America like that.
I guess it's a good average value. Yeah. In meanwhile, we had 4 weeks in New Zealand while waiting for our car. And New Zealand, this was also a bit more expensive. Hiring a camper.
Hiring a camper,
and so on. Yeah, it's a good average. It's not too bad for calculation.
Okay, very good.
From my side, to serious plan some buffer for your return. That also might be a good thing for some new cars or everything else. Yeah.
I mean, you will surely need some money when you get back home. That will apply for us, and that will apply for anybody else who gets home. So having some money in the back pocket does not harm at all.
Okay, very good. And it sounds like you guys are not working while you're on the road. You had just simply done a lot of savings to make sure that you could do the trip.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. That was
So that was our aim, that we do have to work not being on the road, that we can fully enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a real break from the reality.
Very good. That's awesome. Thank you for going through those details. It's super helpful.
Was there a certain time duration that you did save for? Like you wanted to save X amount of years or months?
Oh, to be on the road like 1 year, 2 years?
Yeah, so basically we calculated it the other way. We said we want to be 2 to 3 years on the road, and how much do we need to save for that?
Okay, that makes sense. So on navigation and communication, what are you using for navigation? Is it either apps on your phone, paper maps, or a GPS?
We use all three.
Yeah, it's a combination.
Okay.
That's one of the experiences. We were on a previous holiday trip. We were in the middle of the bush in Africa and got nearly stuck because our GPS broke, and that was the only one we had. So maybe we are a bit too much on the safe side, but we carry 2 GPS and use navigation also on the phone and paper maps. But the main navigation to answer that is an Android tablet we are using, so app-based navigation.
Yeah.
Okay, and what app do you generally tend to use?
We use Osman Plus.
Okay, that's a new one.
New one.
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
OSMAND and then a plus.
Very good. We'll have to look
so
it up.
It uses OpenStreetMap cards.
Okay, that makes sense. Then on communication, any tips from cell phone plans to getting SIM cards?
Not real tips. I would say we always try to figure out in advance which is the best network in the country and then get a local prepaid SIM card. Yeah. So we use a VLAN router in our car with a local prepaid SIM card, which basically provides us it. That's it. That's what we mainly do use then for communications.
Okay. And do you use a spot or an inReach for emergency communications if need be?
No, we were thinking about that. We also considered satellite phones when we planned for it. But the tricky thing is, whom do you call? And what does it help when somebody gets a message in Germany that we are stuck in Mongolia with a broken axle or so? Does that really help? So we decided not to have and rather rely on our dear Land Cruiser and limited mechanic skills.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's go through some onboard necessities real quick. How much fuel can you carry? How far does that take you? And how do you generally calculate your fuel needs?
We can carry 180 liters, around about, 47 gallons.
Okay.
47 gallons, which takes us about 1,200 kilometers, which is 750 miles. I roughly calculate now, but I'm not 100% sure. And how we calculate it, I would say that's based on experience. We had a Land Cruiser before in Australia, as mentioned. Now we have a bit of trips with this one and a bit of experience. So we can guesstimate how much we need. And based on the fact that we have two separated tanks, 90 liters each, it's pretty easy when you have one-way tours, for example. When you know one of your tanks is getting empty, you still have the other one for the return trip or so. But there's no sophisticated math behind that.
Okay. And how much water do you carry, and any tips you have on filtering water when needed?
We have about 100 liters water, so 25 gallons. And we used, in Asia, we used water disinfection when we had questionable sources, which we added to the water, needed or not, we don't know. We also have a water filter system, which we built, but have
so far.
But it's good to have it, And one thing we did just comes to my mind in terms of tips. We have one tank which is drinking water only. So we have a 20-liter tank inbuilt, which we only fill with water from secure sources.
Yeah, so like from the supermarket, plastic cans from supermarket, something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or the water machines that they have here in Arizona, where you get 5 gallons.
In some other countries, in the past, we had water houses, and there you can buy water where the locals also buy their water. And
that would be another tip. Maybe check out where the locals get their drinking water. And in Mongolia, they have so-called water houses where you buy 20-liter buckets of water, which is absolutely fine to drink.
Yeah. And also saying what happens, what we learned in the past, our water outside was sometimes frozen during the cold night. So it's always good to have some water inside, just for preparing some coffee, brushing your teeth or something like that. It was a good experience that we have the small tank in addition, because the separate water tank was sometimes frozen during the night.
That's a good point. That's actually something we did not think through till the end. We
didn't expect it.
The water tank outside was a couple of times frozen, again in Washington and in Oregon. So there it's would be good to have either insulated or prepared water tanks, or to have inside a bit of a water that you can use in those cases.
Yeah, those are really good tips. So what are you doing electric-wise? Like, are you using solar or a generator to keep your batteries charged up for your fridge?
Definitely solar. Isn't there anything more annoying than a generator on a quiet desert evening?
No generator.
No, solar. So we have solar on the roof, and we have an external solar panel which we could put out when we park somewhere for longer. Or now in the winter we use more the external one, because the flat solar panels on the roof do not bring that much energy.
Oh, okay. And so what solar panels are you using? What size are they?
We have 140 watts on the roof, and 120 is the external one.
Okay. And then what refrigerator are you using? What size is it? And any tips you would have on selecting a refrigerator?
Noise. The first thing is a noise, because the fridge is always inside, or the usual thing is inside, and you have to sleep in the same area. So the noise it's a very important thing, what we learned.
So we use a Dometic compressor fridge, 55 liters. Beside the noise, I totally agree. is the handling. So are there any clips you have to open every day? How does that fit with your furniture in the car, with your interior? Can you easily handle that? Because there were a lot of manufacturers with beautiful and amazing fridges we considered earlier, and then we always got stuck with that we cannot open it properly without always against the furniture with our hands. So we ended up with that what we have now.
Yeah. Take a look on the closure system. That's a good thing.
That's super smart. Any specific recovery gear that you use or would recommend?
So we don't have a winch. We decided that we don't need one because we will not do extremely hardcore off-roading, and it's kind of a insurance policy that I don't do stupid stuff.
It's a good insurance policy to have.
Yeah, I have a tendency doing that, honestly, but not having wheels.
What?
Yeah, you know that. But what we definitely recommend having is a snatch strap, having traction boards, and we carry 2 jacks, so we don't have a high lift jack, but we have 2 hydraulic jacks, and a tire repair kit, and of course a spare tire. That's what we carry, and so far, let's knock on wood, we have only used it for other people.
Yeah.
The traction boards we have also used for ourselves, but snatch strap only used to get other people out. So there's, I guess there's a lively debate every now and then if diff locks are needed at an overlanding vehicle or not. I would say without our nice MT tires and without our 2 diff locks, we would have needed to use our recovery gear much more often for us.
No, that's true. Yeah.
So I consider our 2 diff locks as the most used recovery gear for our own car, I would say.
Yeah, super helpful. Okay, good.
Road stories are always a favorite. What's a favorite road story of yours, or maybe a situation you were nervous going into, and how did it turn out?
My story was the shower in Iran.
Your story is the shower in Iran, I know. No, I mean, there's so many, and there are so many things also where you're nervous about. So we were planning getting, again in Iran, getting into the Lut Desert, and we were aiming for exploring it very deeply, so getting completely off the beaten path to the high sand dunes, which is an area which is unfortunately famous for drug smuggling because it's very close to Pakistan border, and a lot of criminal activity and a lot of military patrols. There were not really clear messages if you even can go there alone without a guided tour or not, but we still decided we get there. So we were a bit nervous, but the car was completely filled up with diesel, with water, with everything for more than a week. And there's a nice little salt lake you had to cross to get to the trailhead, basically to head deeper into the Lut. And what happened 2 weeks before that, and we didn't know it, was there was a flash flood coming down, and the whole track was destroyed. So we were not even able to cross the salt lake.
Yeah. So the stupid thing is, at the end of the day, we struggled in the desert by water.
That's crazy.
So it was so the road was destroyed to too much water. That was a funny thing at the end of the day. Yeah.
The salt lake was completely flooded. There was no way around it. So being nervous for nothing, I'm suffering from that.
So what did you do? Did you turn around? Did you go through it?
Change your plans.
We had to turn around. There was no way getting through. I mean, crossing a salt lake which is completely flooded is something which is not wise to do if you want to keep your car.
Just to have a plan B. Yeah.
So we have not seen that part of the Lut Desert we wanted to see, and I said I'm still suffering from it. I think I have to go back.
It should happen.
You should.
It should happen.
Yeah.
Any helping others, doing good, or philanthropy that you focus on while you're overlanding?
So there's no specific organization or so we are supporting, but what we figured out for us, which worked nicely for us, is buy local. So having said that, what it means for us is really buying where possible from the farmer directly, or in Russia at the markets there were sections where some grandmother types of older ladies were sitting, who were basically selling what they had left from the garden, which they could afford to sell to make some money. So we bought rather from them than buying from the normal dealer or from the supermarket, which is for us a good way of giving the money that you anyhow have to spend for your food the right people or the people directly.
Yeah, that's good. Cool. So this has been a lot of fun. Anything that we've missed?
I don't think so, Karin.
I don't think so.
Let's wrap it up with some fun facts about you. What keeps your co-driver occupied on long drives?
If I the co-driver, I'm responsible for the entertainment, especially the music, and for sure, I'm also take care about the road conditions or some animals on the road, and helping hand regarding the navigation, especially on difficult areas, Mongolia, for example. So it's not possible for the driver to do everything, to take a look for the GPS, to take a look for the road, to take a look for anything else, and
But in general, we try to avoid too long drives so that it's not get boring. But for us, as Karin said, the co-driver usually takes care about navigation, music, and keeps an eye on the road, which is especially off-road extremely helpful.
How many miles do you guys average per day, do you think?
I can't say that. Today was a long driving day, and we had 200 kilometers, which is 120 miles.
Okay, and that's a long
would
day.
Guess, and that was a long driving day. As I said, we try to avoid long days. We rather enjoy the nature when we are somewhere.
Yeah. And we try to avoid to drive in the darkness.
Okay.
Especially in unknown area.
Oh, yeah.
And Karin, if you're in charge of the entertainment, are you the one singing or are you playing music?
Sometimes both.
There we go. Thought we double check.
Sometimes I'm singing more if Christian wants.
That's what you said.
Normally playing just put some playlists on the iPhone and something like that. I'm not really a good singer, but I like it. And sometimes the trick is to turn the music much louder than you can sing.
That's true.
Do either of you play any musical instruments on the road or around the campfire at night?
No.
No,
we are boring just sitting on the campfire.
That's great.
What's your favorite drink in the morning to get you going?
Coffee.
Yes.
Tea, but I drink coffee as well.
Karin is this kind of a social coffee drinker because it's easier having just one drink.
Yeah, but to be honest, I would prefer tea, but I drink coffee as well, yeah.
But therefore you're allowed to sing every now and then.
So of all the regions that you've been, where's a favorite region that you've gotten coffee before?
I have never thought about the regions where I get the coffee from, to be honest. No. I prefer dark roasts, but where it comes from does not matter too much.
No special country, I guess, yeah.
Okay.
Usually I rather prefer smaller coffee roasters. So not the big ones, but give the smaller ones a chance, but no special region.
Sometimes if we saw some direct stores, then we bought the coffee from that.
Okay. And what's a favorite beverage at night to wind down after a long day on the road?
That's a big range.
There's everything involved from beer over red wine to rum, whiskey, or what is available.
Depending from the availability and also depending from the temperature, because
true.
if it's hot, then the cold beer, it's great. If it's more or less cold than a red wine, it's fine. Sometimes after a tough day, whiskey or rum is also good.
Yeah.
I like your thinking.
So I'm looking at a picture of your vehicle, and on the back at the top, you have a separate compartment. Is that a liquor cabinet?
Oh, Lisa. That would be a very large liquor cabinet.
I wish
That's what I'm
would
saying.
be.
There are those unused things in there, like the sidewalls for our awning, for example.
Okay.
To be honest, sometimes we have to store the liquor in with our clothes because we mentioned it's not so much space, and the normal place. The beer for sure is in the fridge, but whiskey and rum is stored with our clothes.
What is your best advice to aspiring overlanders like us?
Huh.
Oh, does it?
I think we said it in the beginning. Don't think and plan too much. Get it going, and
Just make it happen, yeah.
definitely have the one or other test tour with your rig, maybe 2 or 3 weeks here and there, not just a weekend. By doing that, for example, we figured out we had too less water, so we had to add 2 more water tanks.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
like Christian said, just start and trust the magic of new beginning.
Woohoo, wise words.
Yeah.
That was good. All right, guys. So how can people learn more about you and what you're doing? What's the best way to connect with you?
Well, it's in general our blog, so on wildlifemoments.de. And don't be afraid, it's in English, it's not in German. The same way you can find us on Instagram if you look for wildlifemoments.de. And then, of course, just get in contact with us either via Instagram or send us a message via our blog. We usually try to reply fast when we have network availability. But apologize already now for being sometimes slow because we spend a lot of time in the desert with not so good network.
Yeah. And it's in English because it's Christian's job to write the blog.
Yeah, your website, your blog is absolutely amazing. So to our listeners, be sure and check that out, wildlifemoments.de. A lot of really good information on there. So any more information you'd like to give or useful resources that our listeners should check out?
I think one thing maybe from my side, it's depending from the countries, we unterschätzt.
We underestimated.
We underestimated the problems with the language. For sure, you can't speak or you can't learn every language, but in the most of the countries during the last month, it wasn't nearly impossible with English. And afterwards or retrospective, I would learn a little bit of Russian or some basics from the local language.
That's a good point. That's something we underestimated is the language. So even in big cities in Russia, you might struggle with English only.
Yeah.
And the same applies for all those previous Soviet Union countries. They don't necessarily like to speak Russian anymore, but they do. So when you plan to go that way, learn some Russian, definitely.
Yeah, and other countries, Spain, French, whatever. Yeah.
Well, I think that also gives you a better connection to the locals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time. We are humbled that you've given us such an amazing look into your world, experiences, and knowledge. Safe travels and adventures to you, and we hope to catch up with you again in the future.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. Bye.
And as always, be sure to connect with Karin and Christian at wildlifemoments.de. Works on social media and for the website, so it keeps it super simple. It was a lot of fun. It was a good conversation. Did you enjoy it?
I did.
That's super great. Their blog posts on their website are super informative, and they have been overlanding literally from Australia to Washington State.
now in New Mexico and continuing south. A ton of info and experiences to learn from, or simply be captivated by their excellent writing.
Yes, Christian is an excellent writer. That shows in the blog post. There is one thing I wanted to comment on. This is the second time a guest mentioned not having a device like a Garmin InReach or a Spot. And really, what's the point? Even though they could contact someone back home, in Germany in this case, what are they going to do? Jump on an airplane and fly out there and meet them in New Mexico? And I mean, it's a valid point, right?
I'd go to Mexico.
You're also not in Germany. However, it's wise to keep in mind, number one, as Christian said in this interview, be prepared to be resourceful and just fix whatever the problem is. 100% agree. Absolutely right. Don't be the person who hits the SOS button and have a rescue team come get you because you have a blister on your toe. Oh. But I will save that full story for the campfire. Anyway, both in the United States and elsewhere, if you are in a true emergency situation where life is at serious risk or could be without aid, in most cases, there is a search and rescue team that can be called to help. In those times where a SAR team is not needed, or you're in an area that's simply not an option for that to happen, being able to contact someone explaining your situation, with them being able to then contact help or other overlanders on social media who are in the same area to come assist you, or simply find some resources or answers to your questions like, hey, what's this air code on my dash? My truck won't start. Can seriously be worth the weight in gold, as they say. That's my view. And as a past search and rescue person, I would advise you always have one with you and absolutely know how to use it. Get off my little soapbox now.
Karin and Christian, it was an absolute great time. We so enjoyed connecting with you, sharing some laughs, and learning from your experiences.
We enjoyed it immensely and so appreciate the two of you.
To you, our listener, thank you.
Yep, that's you. We think you're awesome, and we absolutely appreciate you listening, and hope you both enjoyed listening to Karin and Christian, and hopefully picked up a few ideas and tips along the way. For good overlanding karma, kindly subscribe, rate,
and review the podcast on your podcast platform of choice, giving GHT Overland Podcast a little extra love. You can visit the show notes page on our website at ghteoverland.com/podcasts. Select the Wildlife Moments episode. All the details and helpful links are already there for you.
A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. You guys are rock stars. Your continued support of the podcast really means the world to us. With your hard-earned money, we don't take that lightly. And to you, if you are interested in supporting the show, maybe you could get a t-shirt, maybe a coffee mug, maybe both. They're both awesome, and that coffee mug really does proven double as a sweet G&T mug at night. Take a look at the options while you're there, and feel free to send any questions, suggestions, and feedback to ghteoverlandpodcast@gmail.com.
GHT is showing gratitude, being humble, and having the tenacity to tackle your dreams. Thank you, and we will see you in a few more Thursdays. Bye.